On that particular day, I crouched down to pick up the soap. And before I could rise, I sensed him. Behind me. He was close, imposing. He remained silent. Simply touched me right there. In that instant, I realized everything was about to shift and there was no turning back. It all began one day. Indeed, in prison. The first lesson you learn is not how to fight, but how to vanish. Blend in. Minimize your presence. Ensure your name does not resonate in the wrong conversations or linger in the wrong thoughts. That was my strategy for surviving those initial 3 months. Ethan, with blonde hair, quiet demeanor, and thin enough to be perceived as weak, clever enough to remain hidden. I kept my head down. Eyes cast low, never treading where I didn't belong. And I certainly did not gaze at anyone, especially not him. However, the day everything changed, I found myself seated in the far corner of the cafeteria, pushing a cold gray slop around my tray, attempting to suppress my gag reflex. The noise was a constant background cacophony of trays clattering, fists thudding against tables, voices intertwining in threats, jokes, and curses. The odor of sweat and something sour clung to everything. Just like every day. Just like every meal. Until suddenly it was not. There was a shift. A pause. Something subtle yet dense in the air. As if the entire room inhaled and forgot to exhale. I did not intend to look up. I was unaware I had until I spotted him. Jake. I had heard the name. Murmured like a warning since my first day inside. Tall, broad, black. Dangerous. He embodied everything I was not. His physique appeared sculpted from strength. Skin shimmering under the fluorescent lights. His gaze swept the room as if it belonged to him. Perhaps it did. Every inmate in that cafeteria seemed to yield slightly when he passed by, as if gravity itself bowed to him. He spoke little. He had no need to. A single glance from Jake could clear a path, silence a fight, compel grown men to reconsider everything they had ever done. Some claimed he had sent a man to the infirmary with a single punch. Others asserted he required no fists. Just his presence. So when he locked eyes with me, I felt a surge of panic. I did not look away quickly enough. I stood still, my body frozen. His gaze was fixed on mine from across the room, piercing and weighty, akin to a spotlight I had not earned. My fork halted midair. My throat constricted. Then, unexpectedly, he smirked. It was not derisive. It was not frigid. It was playful, almost warm. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. And then, to my astonishment, he winked. A slow, intentional, unmistakable wink. I blinked, uncertain if I had truly seen it. But I had. He walked away, tray in hand, his companions falling into step behind him like shadows. He did not glance back, yet I could not tear my gaze away from him. The rest of the cafeteria returned to its usual chaos as if nothing had transpired. But within me, everything had changed. I kept my eyes down for the remainder of the meal, forcing food past a throat that felt too tight to swallow. Upon returning to my cell, I found myself unable to stop replaying the moment. That smirk, that wink, those eyes that did not merely look through me, but into me. It was madness. I reminded myself of this 100 times. Jake was oblivious to people like me. I was insignificant here. A specter. A frightened, pale child who counted the hours, who flinched at loud voices, who had never thrown a single punch. What could he possibly want with someone like me? I lay on my back in the bunk, staring at the ceiling, arms crossed over my chest like a shield. The buzzing of flickering lights outside the cell was the only sound, yet even that could not silence my thoughts. I turned to my side, then back again. It was futile. Then I heard it, a shuffle, soft and near. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding in my ears. I stepped barefoot onto the cold concrete floor and padded to the bars. My cell faced another across the narrow walkway, but most nights the men there were already asleep, except for tonight. Jake was standing there. He leaned against the bars of his cell, arms crossed, bare arms glistening in the dim hallway light. His expression was inscrutable, quiet, and those eyes were fixed on me, observing. I stood still. He did not move, did not blink, just stared. The silence between us was louder than any shout. "Hey," he said. Just one word. Deep, low. It rolled down the corridor like thunder encased in velvet. I swallowed hard. What? His smirk returned slowly, slyly, and with an electric charge. "I don't bite unless that's your preference." My cheeks turned red. I averted my gaze, attempting to conceal the foolish smile that was struggling to emerge on my face. This was not occurring. Not truly. I was either hallucinating, dreaming, or worse, about to become the subject of the cruelest joke this place could devise. Yet, I couldn't help but keep my eyes on him. And I understood. I understood that something had begun. Something unattainable, something perilous. The following morning felt distinct from all others. The cold air had a sharpness to it. As I splashed water on my face in front of the cracked mirror, my reflection appeared unfamiliar, tense, and expectant. "You're losing your mind," I whispered to myself. Jake did not engage with others. He did not flirt. He did not wink. Not unless he desired something. Not unless it was a game. I was unprepared to participate. However, as we assembled for morning roll call, he was the reason I was there, maintaining the same posture, leaning against his bars as if it were a throne. And as I walked past, he maintained eye contact. "Sleep well, pretty boy." His voice was just loud enough to be heard. Heads turned, eyes narrowed, and mine. Mine dropped quickly, but I sensed his gaze following me all the way to the end of the line. I instructed myself to forget it, to dismiss it. Whatever game he was playing, I lacked the strength to endure it. But that night, he was there once more, waiting, observing. And deep down, I recognized that something was unfolding. The atmosphere in the prison cafeteria had shifted. It was not something tangible. It was simply sharper, heavier. As if every whisper lingered a beat too long. As if every glance stayed just long enough to make my skin crawl. I attempted to persuade myself that I was imagining it, that Jake had merely made a joke and moved on. But deep down, I knew better. Jake had seen me. And now, so had everyone else. I avoided his gaze that morning. I kept my tray close to my chest, sliding into the farthest corner possible from his group. And consumed his meal like a man attempting to conquer his own trepidation. Yet, it was of no consequence. I could sense his presence from across the room. It enveloped me like warmth, unyielding and unavoidable. It wasn't long before he closed the gap once more. I didn't even notice his approach. One moment, I was solitary. The next, a shadow hovered over me, and my heart nearly skipped a beat. I looked up, and there he stood. Jake, with his tray in hand, observing me with that composed, perilous expression that revealed nothing. "Do you mind if I join you?" he inquired. As if we were mere strangers on a park bench. Not two inmates amidst a cage filled with predators. I gazed at him, astonished. My throat constricted. Around us, the atmosphere hushed. Not entirely, but sufficiently for me to hear my heartbeat in my ears. Sure, I managed to say. He took a seat across from me. Without awaiting the complete response. The bench creaked under his weight. The men at adjacent tables cast furtive glances. Perplexed, inquisitive, some evidently unsettled. Jake remained silent at first. He simply ate. Slowly, deliberately. Each action was meticulous, as if even chewing was an act he performed on his own terms. I attempted to eat as well, but my hands refused to cease trembling. Eventually, he placed his fork down and leaned forward. Elbows resting on the scarred surface of the table. "You are different," he remarked. Voice low and unwavering. I blinked. "What? You do not regard me as others do." He tilted his head slightly. Eyes narrowing. "You are not afraid of me." I forced a breath through my teeth. "Should I be?" He emitted a low, soft chuckle. It wasn't cruel, it was as if he was amused, as though I had passed some examination I was unaware I was undergoing. "Most are," he stated. "But you?" "No. You are not like them." I was at a loss for words. My mouth opened, then closed again. Jake observed me for a few more moments, then reclined. "I appreciate that." Before I could reply, one of his associates approached. A large man with a buzz cut and darting eyes. "Jake," he muttered, casting an uneasy glance at me. "We have a situation." Jake did not even flinch. "Take care of it." The man hesitated, yet Jake's voice lowered an octave. Sharp and authoritative. I stated, "Handle it." Buzzcut nodded once and disappeared into the crowd. I remained motionless, perplexed, and anxious. "Why are you addressing me?" I inquired. "What do you desire?" He gazed at me for an extended moment. His expression was inscrutable. "Because I want to." That was all he uttered. No clarification. No follow-up. He stood, raised his tray, and walked away, leaving me with a multitude of questions and a heart racing against my ribs as if it wished to break free. That evening, I sat on my bunk, staring at the ceiling. My thoughts were searching for answers I lacked. I felt out of place in Jake's orbit. I didn't even comprehend it. Men like him did not even engage with men like me. Not unless they sought something. Yet, he had not requested anything. Not yet. Still, I was aware enough about this place to understand that such attention came with repercussions. The cell block was quieter than usual when I approached the bars. I leaned out slightly and indeed, Jake was present. Same stance. Same silent intensity. Observing me. "You are staring again," he said softly. "You are the one observing me?" I retorted. He smirked. "Perhaps I enjoy the view." I blushed. I despised how easily he affected me. How quickly he unraveled the small Defenses I had constructed just to maintain my sanity. Go to sleep, I mumbled, turning away. However, I did not sleep. The following day, during our hour in the yard, I sensed him again. Not merely his gaze, but his presence. He did not approach me, did not speak, but he stood just close enough that our shadows nearly brushed when the sun shifted. His group maintained their usual distance, conversing in low murmurs. But Jake's head would turn subtly. Every time I adjusted my position, I attempted to disregard it. I reassured myself this was a phase. He was simply bored. I was a curiosity. Perhaps someone had placed a bet. But each time I glanced up, he was watching me. Not derisively, not menacingly, just observing. At lunch, I stayed in my usual corner again, hoping perhaps he would leave it undisturbed, but the seat across from me remained vacant. I ought to have experienced relief. Instead, I found myself missing it. That evening, I remained in my cell, feeling restless and uneasy. My thoughts were in constant turmoil. Around midnight, I detected the familiar rustling sound. I hesitated to move. I waited. When I finally turned to look, Jake was present. This time, his arms were not crossed. One hand loosely grasped the bar, and his expression appeared softer. Somehow less like the stone-carved mask he donned during the day. "You are running," he remarked. I remained silent. "From me? From this? What is this?" I whispered. His voice lowered to a near whisper. "Whatever is occurring here?" I stepped closer to the bars, my fingers wrapped around the cold metal. "Why me?" I inquired. "Why are you even engaging with me?" Jake tilted his head, his dark eyes searching my own. "Because you are not like the others," he replied. "And neither am I." For a prolonged moment, neither of us uttered a word. The prison surrounding us faded, the distant snores, the flickering lights, the weight of everything we were forbidden to express. Then, quietly, he added, "Good night, pretty boy." And I smiled slightly because somehow, with the entire world confined behind steel and concrete, I no longer felt so isolated. Yet at that moment, I was unaware there was much more to come. The following morning felt heavier than the previous ones. I dragged myself out of the bunk as if my bones had turned to cement. Outside my cell, the world continued to move as usual, guards shouting, boots stomping, inmates muttering curses under their breath. But within me, nothing was the same. Jake's voice resonated in my mind. "You are not like the others. And neither am I." I had spent the night clinging to those words as if they were both a promise and a warning. Whatever this was, this force drawing him toward me and me toward him, it was not going away, and I was uncertain if I desired it to. Still, I endeavored to maintain my distance. I did not seek him out in the cafeteria. I did not glance in his direction in the yard. However, that did not imply I was unaware of him. I could sense his presence when he was near, the way the atmosphere shifted. The soft silence that trailed behind him like a shadow. I caught fleeting glimpses of him throughout the Day. His gaze found me. Even when mine did not dare reciprocate. Each time I looked away, it felt as though I was deceiving both of us. It wasn't until later that afternoon that I discovered we had both been assigned to clean duty together. I heard my name called by one of the guards, followed by Jake's NE8. My stomach sank immediately. Bathroom. Duty. Block C. Both of you. Now, the bathroom in cab block was among the most unpleasant places in the prison. Filthy. Always humid, filled with rust and reverberations. Most of the guards steered clear of it. This meant inmates utilized it to settle scores or worse. I was reluctant to go. Not with him. Not when I couldn't think clearly around him. But I had no choice. We walked there in silence. I was a few steps ahead. He was close behind. The hallway felt too constricted, the walls too near. When the heavy metal door creaked open, the stench of mildew and bleach struck me forcefully. Inside, it was as dreadful as I remembered. Cracked tiles, shattered mirrors, water pooling around clogged drains. The guards didn't even bother to monitor us. One nodded, locked the door behind us, and departed. Just the two of us. Alone. I attempted to remain composed. I grabbed a mop and a bucket from the corner, keeping my back to him. My hands trembled as I scrubbed the floor, too, conscious of every breath I took. Are you always this quiet? Jake inquired from behind me. I did not turn around. Only when I'm confined in a moldy bathroom with someone who intimidates me. He chuckled low and rich like the sound of thunder building into a storm. I don't intimidate you, he stated. I continued mopping. Are you certain about that? Jake's boots echoed against the tile as he advanced closer. I sensed him before I saw him as warmth, his presence. You believe I don't notice the way you gaze at me? He asked. I turned slowly. You think I'm not attempting not to? He grinned, stepping even closer. Then perhaps try harder. My mouth went dry. He stood merely a foot away now, his chest rising and falling. His dark eyes scanning mine. The air between us was thick, electric. He leaned one shoulder against the wall and tilted his head. You're not accustomed to someone desiring you, are you? I remained silent. He pushed off the wall and approached me. Slow. Deliberate. You possess that expression, he remarked. As if you're uncertain whether to flee or remain. Perhaps I should flee, I murmured. Yet, I did not move. Jake stopped in front of me, not making contact. Just there. His voice lowered. I won't pursue you, Ethan. I don't need to. His words struck deeper than I anticipated. He wasn't threatening me. He was speaking the truth. He reached up slowly, deliberately, and allowed his fingers to graze my jaw. Just the lightest touch, yet it sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His eyes searched mine. You keep gazing at me like that, he whispered. What do you believe will occur? I had no idea. And I despised that I was uncertain. I interrupted the moment, turning quickly, almost knocking over the mop bucket. We should complete the cleaning, I stammered, backing away. Jake did not stop me. He merely watched as I bent down and resumed scrubbing. My hands trembled more intensely now. He remained silent for the remainder of the time. When we finished, I left first. I did not wait for him. Did not look back. I felt like a coward and I loathed myself for it. That night, I sat on my bunk, staring at the bars before me. Jake was absent. Not initially, but eventually, as always, he appeared. He leaned against the bars, arms crossed. His gaze was not playful. This evening, it was still almost patient. You fled, he stated. I lingered in the shadows of my cell. I am unsure what you desire from me. I have already told you, he said. I want you. My chest tightened. Why? I inquired. Because you make me feel as though I am not merely surviving here. The silence that followed was deafening. He allowed it to linger. Then spoke again, quieter this time. Do you believe I frighten you more, or do you frighten yourself? I did not respond. I could not, for I was uncertain. He did not press, just maintained my gaze. Good night, handsome boy, he whispered, then retreated into the shadows. Yet, I remained by the bars, my hands clutching the cold metal, my heart racing. I had not kissed him. I had not touched him. Yet somehow, something had already transpired between us. There was no turning back now. Somewhere between fear and obsession, I had ceased to care about the boundaries I was meant to respect. That morning, the guards shouted louder than usual. The corridor reeked of metal and bleach, and someone, somewhere, was weeping behind a cell door. It should have reminded me of the reality of this place. But all I could think about was him. Jake had not communicated with me since the bathroom incident. Not truly. Yet I saw him every day, every hour. Each time I glanced across the yard, across the cafeteria, down the row of cells, he was there, not merely observing, but waiting. And I despised that. I enjoyed it. I attempted to keep my distance. I tried to persuade myself that it was all in my imagination. Perhaps he was simply bored. Perhaps this was merely a way to pass the time, a display of power, a game. But when I entered the communal showers that afternoon, I realized there was no longer any room for pretense. The showers in this prison were akin to everything else: cold, cracked, exposed, devoid of privacy, devoid of mercy. You kept your gaze lowered, moved swiftly, and hoped nothing untoward occurred. Violence was prevalent here. The stairs could lead to your demise. I kept my head down as I stepped into the spray. The lukewarm water cascaded over me, cleansing the sweat and grime, but not the tension. I could feel it accumulating in my shoulders, tight and burdensome. Then I sensed it, a presence behind me. I did not turn immediately. I did not need to. The warmth of his body was unmistakable. When I finally glanced over my shoulder, he was there, Jake, standing just a few feet away, water trickling down his chest, arms glistening, eyes fixed on mine as if I were the only person in existence. You seem tense, he remarked, his voice low, nearly drowned out by the sound of the water. I turned slightly, my heart racing, because you are standing there like that. He grinned. That same infuriating smirk that made my knees weak. Do you believe I'm here to harm you? I remained silent. I couldn't respond. Jake advanced slowly. Purposefully. No haste. No menace. Just his presence. No one is here, he said in a softer tone now. Just you and me. I swallowed hard. My breath faltered. Steam curled around us, rising like fog between realms. I could see every scar on his body, the contours of muscle, the tails his skin held. But I perceived more than that. The way his eyes softened slightly when he drew near, the way his hand refrained from reaching out until he was certain I wouldn't flinch. And then it did. He first touched my shoulder, just one hand, warm and heavy, yet gentle. I remained still. My body froze, as if the water itself had halted for us. His other hand glided down my arm, slowly, anchoring me. I finally looked up and met his gaze. Do you trust me? He inquired. I didn't think so. I didn't consider the cost. I simply nodded, and he kissed me. It was different, deeper, slower, heavier. It carried significance, a need that was raw, something neither of us wished to acknowledge, yet both of us felt deep within our bones. I dropped my soap, and when it struck the ground, we both paused for just a moment. Until he leaned closer and whispered, "Now it's official." I laughed. Actually laughed. Short and breathless. Then I seized him as if I had been drowning. And he was the only air I could inhale. His arms enveloped me, shielding me, pressing me against him. The water continued to pour, but I barely sensed it anymore. All I could feel was Jake, his breath, his warmth, his heartbeat, his hands gripping my waist, sliding up my back. He kissed me again. More forcefully this time, as if he were attempting to memorize the shape of my mouth. I allowed him. I desired him to. It didn't last long. It couldn't. Voices reverberated down the hallway. Another group approaching. Jake withdrew, breathing heavily, his lips mere inches from mine. "You're mine," he whispered. "Do you understand?" I nodded, feeling dizzy. "And no one touches what's mine." The impact of those words struck me harder than any blow could have. I observed him take a towel, wrap it around his waist, and vanish into the steam without glancing back. I leaned against the cold tiles, attempting to regain my breath. I belonged to him, and I was indifferent to who witnessed it, yet others were not. The murmurs began the following day. Not loud, not overt, merely a shift in how people regarded me. Their gazes lingered too long, too intent. I caught whispers as I walked by. I noticed smirks that failed to reach anyone's eyes. They were aware or speculating. In prison, that was sufficient to render me a target. Jake noticed, naturally. His crew now circled him more closely, their eyes sharper. The atmosphere around me became denser each time I traversed the yard. Each time I bent to retrieve my food tray, each time I prepared to sleep, the walls were eavesdropping. We refrained from discussing it, not openly. However, the following evening, as the sun seeped into the crevices of the cell block and the guards settled into their routines, Jake appeared at the bars opposite me. He did not smile. "Things are changing," he remarked. I was already aware. I moved closer, gripping the bars with both hands. What should we do? He regarded me for a prolonged moment before responding, we remain united. No doubt, no trepidation. He made it seem straightforward, yet we both understood it was not. As night descended, I came to the realization that I was unbothered. Even if it cost me my life, I would not relinquish my hold. I recognized this was merely the beginning. The subsequent days progressed like a slow, grinding machine, gear shifting into the next while the tension escalated like steam within a sealed boiler. I sensed it everywhere, in the yard, the cafeteria, the showers. The stakes had changed, they were now less inquisitive, more strategic. Jake's name signified safety. Until now, he still moved with authority, still carried himself like a king. Yet even kings bleed when someone detects vulnerability. And to love someone here, to desire someone, that was a vulnerability. That was perilous. I did not require him to inform me that conditions were deteriorating. I could sense it. The way men slightly turned their backs as we passed by. The way Jake's crew shifted a bit closer. Around him. Silent sentinels, vigilant. Watchers, too many unspoken words lingering in the atmosphere like daggers. And me? I was the cause of it all. That night, sleep eluded me. I perched on the edge of my bunk, gazing across the walkway at his cell. His light was off. Yet I sensed he was awake. I could feel his presence. Jake? I murmured. He emerged into the dim light of the hallway as if he had been anticipating my call. You all right? He inquired. I nodded. They are observing. They have been observing. I tightened my hold on the bars. Is this my fault? His demeanor remained unchanged. Number. It belongs to us. That signifies it is our responsibility. I wished to believe that. I wished to believe I wasn't pulling him down. But deep within, I understood they were not coming for us. They were coming for him because of me. The following morning, the sky appeared bruised. Dark clouds engulfing the sun. Before it had a chance to rise. Something about it felt amiss, incorrect. I was restless all day, and by the time yard hour arrived, I was reluctant to step outside. However, declining would have made me a larger target. Thus, I ventured outside and kept my head low. Just as I used to. Jake was already there, positioned near the far fence, with two of his associates flanking him. When he glanced at me, it was momentary, but it conveyed everything. Remain vigilant. I adhered to the outer wall, pacing slowly, feigning ignorance to the shadows closing in. The other inmates were dispersed in small clusters, most pretending not to acknowledge us. Yet I noticed it. The way they shifted, the way they circled, something was approaching. And then it struck. It began with one man. I was unaware of his name. I had never seen him up close before. He was tall, lean. All sharp angles and clenched fists. He stepped in front of me and sneered. Do you think you are special? He spat. I froze. Do you think hiding behind him renders you untouchable? My throat constricted. I took a step back, and that was when I heard it. The sound of movement. Quick. Heavy. Jake. He was already there. Already positioned between us. The man's sneer wavered for just a moment. Is there a problem here? Jake inquired, his voice steady. Dadley? The man remained silent. He had no need to respond, as within moments the others arrived. 4. Might be 5, perhaps more. Jake's team attempted to encircle them, but it was too late. Fists began to fly. Cries erupted. The yard erupted into chaos. I observed Jake move. Like a tempest, striking swiftly, sharply. With precision. He incapacitated 2 of them without hesitation, yet there were too many. And they were not fighting for dominance. They were fighting to convey a message. No. Not here. I called out his name. I tried to reach him, but the guards were sluggish and the crowd was dense. I pushed ahead. Panic searing my lungs. And then I noticed it. Jake on the ground, blood on his face, still swinging, still attempting to rise. I lunged forward, but hands seized me, yanked me back. A guard. 2, they subdued me, shouting commands, but none of it mattered. All I could see was Jake bleeding, collapsing. Crushed under the weight of animosity and fear. When the yard finally cleared and the fight was dismantled, I was dragged to my cell and slammed against the wall. My breath came in short, painful gasps. I didn't feel the bruises. I didn't care. I clutched the bars, gazing down the corridor, heart thundering like a war drum. Jake didn't return. I waited for hours. The light shifted. The noise changed. Meals were served. Guards shouted, still no Jake. And that's when it struck me. I might have initiated something neither of us could endure. I sat on the floor, back against the cold wall, fists clenched tightly in my lap. My lips moved before I could restrain them. They'll pay for this, I murmured. I didn't know who I referred to. But I meant it. Because in a place like this, love is a luxury you cannot afford. And if you do, you better be prepared to bleed for it. And for us, there was no turning back. The night following the yard attack was the longest night of my life. The guards did not inform me where they had taken him. I inquired, pleaded, and was shoved against a wall for speaking out. One of them even smirked and said, "Do not be concerned, handsome boy. Your boyfriend is still alive." Barely. It required all my strength not to break down. I could not sleep. I was unable to. I remained on the edge of my bunk, arms wrapped around my knees, gently rocking. As I used to in my childhood, when my father's fist struck too hard. At that time, I convinced myself that the world was simply cruel. Here, I had lost all illusions. By the time morning arrived, something within me had shifted. I sensed it in my chest. A cold, coiled fury, occupying the space where my fear once resided. Jake had bled for me. Jake had fallen for me. And I would not allow it to be in vain. I received my answer later that Day during shift hour when an older inmate slid a folded piece of paper under my tray at lunch. He did not speak, nor did he even glance at me. He merely continued walking as if nothing had occurred. I waited until I returned to my cell to unfold it. The handwriting was untidy yet recognizable. Still alive. Broken ribs, a bruised eye, solitary confinement for a few days. Do not do anything foolish. I am not finished with you. J. I sat down slowly, the note quivering in my fingers. Relief washed over me. So intensely that I nearly felt nauseous. He was alive. And he had not given up. Neither would I. The following days passed in a haze of silence and suspicion. No one approached me. Not directly, but the glances, the murmurs, the tension. They were perpetually present. Jake's crew maintained a discreet watch over me. The guards began to observe me as if I were merely one bad breath away from losing control. They were not mistaken. Then, 3 days later, I awoke to the sound of the block door unlocking. A surge of bootsteps followed. I did not even need to look. Jake had returned. I moved toward the bars just in time to see him walking down the corridor. Slower than usual, bruised, stitched, and bandaged, yet upright. His eye was swollen, his ribs wrapped in gauze, visible beneath a loose-fitting shirt. But when he caught sight of me, he smiled. A genuine smile. I found it hard to breathe. He nodded once. A subtle gesture, a silent assurance. I am here. That night, when the lights dimmed and the world within these walls softened into whispers and creaks, I heard a tapping sound. 3 gentle knocks on the bars. I crossed the cell and peered outside. Jake was there. His hands wrapped in cloth, bruised. Knuckles visible. His eyes locked onto mine. Through the darkness. Come here, he whispered. I frowned. You're not even supposed to be in this block anymore, he smirked. I'm not supposed to want you either. But here we are. My heart pounded so fiercely I thought it might break through my ribs. I glanced down the corridor, empty, silent, and then I noticed Ift had wedged the side gate open, bribed a guard, perhaps threatened one. I didn't inquire. I simply moved. The hallway felt cold under my bare feet. I slipped into his cell like a specter. The moment the door clicked softly shut, he leaned against it, breathing heavily, not from pain, but from restraint. I stepped closer, slowly. Uncertain. Jake reached for me. Not aggressively, not like a prisoner claiming something, but like a man who needed to hold on to the one thing he still believed in. He drew me into him, arms encircling my back tightly, and I melted into the warmth of his bruised chest. I began, but my voice broke. I'm here, he whispered into my hair. And I told you, you're mine. I looked up at him, fingers grazing the side of his face, careful not to touch the cuts. I was filled with fear. I inhaled. His lips met mine before I could say anything more. It was Different this time. Slower, desperate. But not from hunger, more as if we were both trying to memorize each other in case we never had another opportunity. His hands found my hips, my waist, my back, gripping me as if I was the only real thing in this entire godforsaken place. I clung to him, fingers digging into his shirt, legs trembling beneath me. We remained silent for a long time. He pulled back only when we were both breathless. His forehead rested against mine. This place, it doesn't get to define us, he whispered. What do we feel? It's real. I nodded, my throat too tight to articulate. We lay down in his bunk, cramped and silent, wrapped around each other like armor. Time stood still. And for one perfect hour, the world beyond that cell ceased to exist. Eventually, I had to depart. He was aware of it. I was aware of it. However, as I rose to leave, he seized my hand. When I am released, he stated, his voice firm, I will come for you. Do you understand? I nodded. I will be waiting. As I returned to my cell and crawled into my bunk, I glanced across the walkway one final time. Jake's cell had become dark once more. Yet, I did not feel isolated because in a place intended to erase us, we had discovered something extraordinary, something worth bleeding for, something worth enduring. And whatever lay ahead, we were already each other's escape. For me, he was not merely another inmate. He was my reason for survival. In a place crafted to shatter us, we uncovered something that no one could take away. I dropped the soap. But what I picked up instead was love. Raw, dangerous, and unforgettable. And regardless of how long these walls confine us, one thing is certain. He belongs to me and I belong to him, always. And for you, do not forget to subscribe because this is merely the beginning.